Hi, I'm Johnny. This is Johnny Likes, the show where I talk about movies that I like. And today I'm talking about one of my favorite movies of all time. Today, Johnny likes Children of Men.
You tell him, Johnny! You tell the world!
Spoiler warning, this is full of spoilers. It's really nothing but spoilers. We're following Theo, played by Clive Owen, as he enters a busy cafe. All the other patrons are focusing on a TV where it shows that baby Diego, the youngest person on Earth, has just been killed. Theo is uninterested in this news, he just wants his coffee. To him, this child celebrity is not important, but to the general public, this is a huge cultural event. Think Princess Diana dying, something along those lines. For them, Diego was a symbol of hope. For Theo, hope left long ago. Theo gets his coffee, exits the store, and starts to add his own little brand of hope to the coffee. And then all we can hear is a tinnitus shriek and screams as we see a young woman with her arm blown off, looking dazed. Hard cut to credits with screaming over top. This is a brilliant opener for a couple different reasons. First, we are shown stylistically what to expect from the rest of the film. From the filming techniques to the explosive and brutally realistic violence, to the color palette. The tone is set. Second, it shows our focus is not always on Theo. We're not necessarily seeing the world through Theo's eyes, even though he is our guide through the narrative. The camera's eye wanders and we're given glimpses of this future world. We're following Theo like you might in a dream. Third, this shows the audience we aren't going to be spoon-fed every little detail. We can glean enough from a 5-second shot of downtown London to be able to fill in the blanks for ourselves. Technology has continued to grow. Advertising and propaganda is everywhere, and the government has grown even more fascist and controlling. This is an extrapolation of current technologies and societal trends circa mid-2000, and it's unfortunately a very familiar looking place. This feels very much like street-level London. This isn't a fantastical take on the future, it's a much more realist one. Fourth, we're shown in broad strokes who Theo is. He's a guy just trying to keep his head down and get through the day any way he can. I.e. alcohol, which is a theme that is repeated throughout the movie. Fifth, it shows us that our safety should not be taken for granted. Violence in real life is usually quick, vicious, and generally pointless. The violence in this film is no different. This is a place where people are killed all the time, a place where bombings happen at cafes. We are not safe here. And this isn't an action movie where a character can walk off a concussion or a gunshot is just a flesh wound. Theo is more bothered by the way people are reacting to Diego's death at work than he is with his own brush with it while getting coffee. He doesn't even mention it to his boss. Instead, he says,
I seem to be more affected by baby Diego's death than I realised, sir. If you wouldn't mind, I'd appreciate it if I could finish my day's work at home.
We learn that Britain is one of the last functioning countries through a news clip while Theo is riding the train home. We learn that much of the populace is angry and at times violent as the train is bombarded with bottles and garbage, and we see that there's metal grates covering the windows, implying that this is an often enough occurrence that the extra protection and the cost of it is warranted. We're shown refugees in cages at the train station with indifferent armed guards standing by. This film excels at knowing which pieces of information must be explicitly told to the audience and what they can figure out by themselves. It knows what to show, and it knows what to tell. Theo's picked up at the train station by his friend Jasper, who's played by Michael Caine, who's charming as ever. They make small talk, which tells of Theo's state of being and paints a fuller picture of the world. This is tastefully done and feels natural. It never feels like an exposition dump, even when it is. Once we enter Jasper's house, we see a detailed shot of his desk, which allows us to almost immediately know who this guy is without having to be told too much in terms of specifics. We can piece together the Coles Notes version of Jasper from a couple shots of Jasper's desk. Jasper and Theo get stoned, and more world building is carefully doled out. Every location we visit seems like a real place. The amount of clutter and general knickknacks is spot on. Everywhere feels like it has a history and that it's actually been lived in. It doesn't feel like it was rented out to the studio for a day. Theo is pulled into a van in the middle of London in broad daylight by what turns out to be a rebel group known as the Fishes. Funny little side note here, because of the accent, I always thought that they were actually called the Fishers, and then I caught it in writing and had a good little laugh at myself about how I, bit of an idiot, don't understand English. Julianne Moore plays Julian, the leader of the Fishes and Theo's ex-wife. She's behind Theo's abduction because she has a tall favor to ask of him. She needs some transport papers. Theo reluctantly does what she asks. They pay him $5,000, but everyone involved knows that he did it just because she asked him to. It seems their marriage broke down after their infant son died. Love was never a problem in the relationship. It was how they dealt with their grief. And Theo arranges for the transport papers through his cousin, who seems to be very well off and in some sort of upper-level governmental power position. His flat has a maimed Michelangelo's David, and a life-sized recreation of the cover of Animals by Pink Floyd. I think it's Animals, right? Am I wrong there? Is that the reference? We further see the class divide as this man is obviously ridiculously wealthy and living in what is essentially a castle, while there are people living in literal cages out on the streets. The Fishes make contact with Theo once again, and we learn that the transport papers are to get Key, a young woman, to the human agents, who are a mysterious group that are a source of hope for the underground resistance. The catch being that the only type of transport papers Theo could get involved an escort, so Theo finds himself along for the ride. This leads into one of my favorite scenes in movies. So we're in a car with Theo, Miriam, a white, older, dreadlocked woman, and Key, who is a young black woman with a smart mouth.
You told me he was suave. Wankers are drunk.
In the front, we have Julian in the passenger and Luke in the driver, who is an upper-level kind of right-hand man to Julian in the Fishes. Theo wakes up from a nap and has some light banter with the rest of the group, including a charming little bit where he and Julian swap a ping-pong ball back and forth.
Right? No, wait. Okay. Do it again.
It's such a small moment, but it illustrates just how well these two people fit together. How quickly they can fall into old patterns. And I found it heartbreaking in its familiarity. They're so right for each other, but have lost something so dear to them that they can never really fit again. So they're having fun, and then all hell breaks loose. A flaming car rolls down into the road, blocking their way. Tons of people begin to rush the car as we struggle to back up and turn around. And the whole time, we're seemingly in the car with the cast. It's a single take, no edits. So we're going full speed backwards as a duo on a motorcycle are chasing us down. The bikers shoot through the windshield, hitting Julian in the neck. They continue their pursuit, pulling up alongside the car, where Theo slams his door open, hitting them and sending them flying. Watching this in the theater, I was thinking that I never would have thought of that, and I would probably be dead in the same situation. It also never occurred to me that where was the cameraman during this? Well, it's actually really cool. They had a custom rig built on top of a car, and the camera plunges down from above, and so he's not actually sitting there, they're operating it from above. Yeah, neat, right? So, back to the story. Our car rights itself just in time to have the police pass going to the scene of the incident. The police make a U-turn and pull us over. And without hesitation, Luke kills both officers, and seemingly leaves the viewer behind, as the camera has exited the car, and we're left with the two dead law enforcement officers. So I remember very clearly at this point in the movie thinking, holy shit, these guys are f***ing serious, meaning the filmmakers. I felt that Julianne Moore getting killed there was so unexpected that pretty much anything could happen for the rest of the movie. It shocked me and it took me completely off guard. It reinforced the feeling of dread and lack of safety that the opening established, and that feeling never left me for the rest of the movie. I was completely on edge. So after the mayhem, we have a short but powerful scene where Key and Miriam are doing some sort of ritual over Julian's body and praying. We see Theo head off to have a cigarette. He pulls out his lighter and completely loses it. He gets about 30 seconds of a private breakdown before he's called back to the car. And his display of grief is one of the most relatable I've ever seen. When it hits, it can be so sudden and powerful that it's literally crippling. At the same time, it shows that he's able to compartmentalize his emotions. He knows that he's still in mortal danger and can't process anymore at the moment. It seems at his core he's a survivor and does what he has to. This is as good a time as any to talk about the score, which was done by a man named John Tavener. It's fairly minimal, and it uses ethereal chants for the most part. When it was used, it was quite effective, and this is the first scene where I really took notice of it, although it does appear in earlier ones. Throughout the film, it was used to enhance the emotions created naturally through the events seen on screen, not to inform the audience that this is how you're supposed to be feeling. I liked how sparingly it was used and how it was much more like an accent or a highlight rather than a crutch. The next location is at a farmhouse, which serves as a fish's safe house / meetup point. It's here that Key reveals to Theo and the audience why it's imperative that she get to the human agents.
I'm scared.
Key shows Theo this in a barn, which I assume was supposed to evoke Christian lore. Even I know that much about Christian stuff. She's not a virgin, but she is a Mary figure, and her child is a miracle. And you can see all the implications of what Key is and what she represents on Theo's face immediately. His whole worldview has immediately altered. Once again, the filmmakers are showing, not telling. And also, keeping with the Christian theme, Theo's response is,
Jesus Christ.
Later that night, Theo overhears that the roadway attack was an attempted coup, and immediately realizes that he and Key are in immediate danger. He wakes up Key and Miriam, and this results in a breathless chase scene, where they are stealing a car, but they have to get it started while Theo is pushing it up this muddy dirt road. So I'm not mechanical. Is that an actual thing where you gotta push it and then start it? Yeah. Meanwhile, the fishes have caught on and are chasing them down on foot, and they're gaining fast. It's a very intense action sequence. And I truly didn't know if they were actually going to make it, just because of the Julianne Moore scene had me so on edge that I thought, oh, maybe they will catch Clive Owen and kill him, and it'll be the rest with Miriam and Key, who knows. Theo takes Key and Miriam to Jasper's place. Once there, Jasper reacts to Key very much the same way Theo did. It seems as though he's found purpose for the first time in years. We're only given a few minutes to relax ever so slightly before it's time for panic mode again. The pacing in this movie is impressively relentless, by the way. Less and less time to rest in between frantic scenes as the film goes on. And I also thought it was a nice touch that Key was braiding Jasper's wife's hair. So the house awakens to an alarm.
It's the alarm. Someone's breaking in. Look at this.
Now, how they found the place isn't made exactly clear, and that's perhaps a minor plot hole in the movie, but I can rationalize it in that they might have had some sort of GPS tracking device in the car. So everyone loads into the car except for Jasper and his comatose wife, Janice. He knows this is how he goes out, and he's happy to do so, because this is once again given him hope. And there's a very great short moment where Jasper puts his hand on the window of the car from the outside, and Key does the same from the inside. Theo and company watch from a safe distance as the fishes arrive and interrogate Jasper. Luke asks where Theo is, and Jasper says,
Pull my finger. I'll do it.
He asks again. Jasper says,
Pull my finger.
It's a swift, brutal, and somehow very touching scene. And I've thought about how I would act as Jasper in the same situation, like many times over the years, actually. And I've always hoped that I would go out that brave. Key, Miriam, and Theo take refuge in an abandoned elementary school, which is also trashed, while they're waiting up to meet up with a connection that Jasper arranged for them before he died. The school is a haunting location due to both its state of disrepair and its futility. No kids, no school, no point. Miriam relates of how she was a midwife when the infertility crisis first happened, and her quick monologue further builds the world.
3 of my patients miscarried in 1 week. Others were in their 5th and 6th month. Managed to save 2 of the poor babies. Next week, 5 more miscarried. Then the miscarriages started happening earlier.
Once again, just enough details to provide the audience with a broader picture, and we can fill in the rest for ourselves. Jasper's connection, Sid, then shows up. Sid's a cop or military of some sort, and as soon as Sid shows up, anxiety levels rise both on screen and in the audience. Sid refers to himself in the third person and is very off-putting. Sid seems a moment away from violence at all times. Definitely not trustworthy vibes from this guy. Nevertheless, he does drop them off and give them instructions on where to meet their next contact, as promised. Meanwhile, Key has started having contractions. They load onto what looks like a prison bus with a bunch of other sad-faced refugees. Miriam relates to Theo how the Human Project contacts people.
Say again?
Contact with the Human Project is done by mirrors. Julian was our mirror. They contact one of our people. That person contacts someone else, and so on till word gets to Julian.
You mean you never actually talked to any of them? Don't fucking tell me you never actually talked to them.
Theo is not reassured in the least. The plan is further revealed that they are to meet a boat the following day at sunset. Key's contractions are getting more intense. My anxiety levels are going through the roof while watching this unfold, by the way. They arrive at Sexhill refugee camp. Key's water breaks and a fascist guard enters the bus. Key can't hide her discomfort and pain and is drawing the attention of the guard.
So what's wrong with you? Look at me, so what's wrong with you?
Gabriel, help us.
Shut up!
As a consequence, Miriam is pulled off the bus and put on the side of the road with a black hood over her head, with all the other people on the ground with black hoods on their heads and their hands tied behind their backs. It's not an ideal situation, nor is it very encouraging. And seeing Miriam get the hood put over her head when 20 seconds earlier she was safe on the bus is a reflection of Julian's unexpected and sudden end earlier. But you're left with the same cold feeling inside. Theo and Key get off the bus and are herded through cages like literal cattle to the slaughter. Theo and Key are now fully in the camp, and it's a hellscape. It's the bad part of New York in Escape from New York. There's trash fires everywhere, there's literal bodies burning in the street, not a friendly face in sight. They meet up with Malenka, their gypsy contact who doesn't speak English. Malenka ferries them to their luxury hotel, which consists of a dirty mattress and a propane lantern. Key gives birth, graphically. And now, despite all odds, for the first time in over 18 years, there's a new person on Earth. There is an incredible feeling of vulnerability here. This is not a sterile hospital setting where we're used to seeing childbirth take place. At least in the modern world, the entire environment is incredibly desperate and hostile. The feeling of unease and dread that is held on for the entire movie is evident now more than ever. Sid and Malenka wake Key and Theo up the next day with bad news. The camp is about to become a war zone, even more so. Sid discovers the baby, and our earlier feelings about Sid are confirmed. He's not a good guy. Sid leads Theo, Key, and the baby out of the room at gunpoint. Sid explains that both the police and the fishes are looking for them, and that he's going to sell them out. A scuffle ensues, and he aids Theo and Key's escape. With a brief moment of panic as we think that perhaps Malenka has stolen the baby.
Baby! Baby!
Quick, the baby!
And that felt like the filmmakers messing with the audience just a little bit, with a fake out. That I entirely fell for, by the way. I totally thought that kid was gone. They narrowly escape, and once outside, Theo waits for Sid to open the door. And he realizes that he's possibly killed him. Most likely the first person that he's ever killed. And you see this look on Theo's face where he quickly has to compartmentalize all this and he'll deal with it later. And he goes to catch up with Malenka and Key. And they walk right through the middle of an angry march. And Theo gets his point across to Malenka that he needs to get to a boat. And she leads them to an old couple that seem to have power and influence. It's finally another brief moment of serenity as the old woman, Key, and Malenka all fawn over the baby as their maternal instincts kick in. The serenity is short-lived, however, though, as Theo looks outside and sees that there are heavily armed troops crawling all over the place. Theo's told that they'll have the boat in 1 hour, and the younger contact presents Theo with a pair of sneakers. In an act of kindness, Theo's been running around in flip-flops for some time now, and he even lost one when he smacked Sid. So Key, Theo, Malenka, and the young guide head out into incredibly hostile territory, and we're entering the finale of the film. They're quickly caught by Luke and his fish goons. Luke takes Key and the child and leaves the rest to be executed by the dreadlocked guy we recognize from the initial attack on the road and later on the farmhouse. Dreads executes the guide before he's distracted by enemy fire. The way that Dreads nonchalantly executes the guide is absolutely frightening. This is a guy who has an intimate familiarity with violence and has no hesitation whatsoever in inflicting pain and terror. This gives Theo enough time to escape, and he and Malenka trying to catch up with Key and Luke. And Theo runs from sketchy location to sketchy location.
Sorry.
He runs through a crowded bus where people are taking refuge, and we get some blood splatter on the camera, which stays with us as a reminder that this is one long unedited shot. It's the most chaotic and, I assume, realistic depiction of war that I'd seen since the storming the beaches of Normandy scene in Saving Private Ryan. Theo enters a building which is being actively fired upon and has many injured people inside. He's frantically going up stories as death is raining down all around him. It's then that he hears a baby cry and has a beacon to lead the way. So he finally catches up with Key and finds her with the baby wailing next to a blown out window, with Luke nearby firing his gun out a hole in the wall. Theo and Luke exchange some words, which ends with Theo and Key running out of the room with the baby while Luke fires at them. And this leads into perhaps the film's most powerful scene, with everyone who hears the child letting them pass by. And this marks the first edit in about 10 minutes. The score kicks in big time with the ethereal chants, and there is no one not moved by the sounds of the baby's cries.
Stop! Cease fire! Cease firing!
It's a truly religious experience for the onlookers. Each of them, in their own way, knows that they've witnessed one of the most important moments perhaps in human history, and they can't help but be awed. And that brief moment of peace is over, as a bomb goes off and the firing resumes. This is an important moment, and I think it's a comment on the nature of people. How foolish we are. We've had 20 years to figure our stuff out since the last kid, basically. Like what's important, how we messed it up, how to fix it. We're given a glimpse of hope with the child, but no, we immediately lapse into our old caveman, us against them, gun-toting ways. Against all odds, they meet up with Malenka again, and she leads them to a sewer where there's a rowboat awaiting them and sends them on their way. Theo paddles them out into the foggy unknown until they reach the buoy where they're supposed to meet the human project. Theo reveals that he's been shot and slowly passes away, but not before Key reveals the name of the child, which will be Dylan. Soon enough, a boat, aptly named Tomorrow, actually shows up as promised, and we fade to credits with the reverb-soaked sound of children's laughter. Oh my god. We're tethered to Theo for nearly the entire film. There's only a few moments where we're not in the room with him, or where he's not in the room with us. Alfonso Cuarón, the director, favors these long, uncut shots where we exclusively follow the characters on foot. So I'm always a sucker for a really long, show-offy, no-edit shot. It's a gimmick, but it's one that takes some talent to pull off. And Cuarón is great at them. And this movie is full of these shots. The scene in the car in the woods is one of them, the climax is another, but throughout the whole film, they go very light on the edits. The color palette in this film is appropriately drained. It fits both England and the world being imagined. A world without children is a world without color or hope. It all fits with the slow apocalypse theme. It's always overcast and gray in the cities, and in the countryside it is this dark, lush green, and still overcast. And I wonder how the film would have changed had the setting changed, if it would have been in Egypt or Brazil. How would the change in locale affect the color palette and the tone of the film? Clive Owen is perfect as Theo. I understood the character very well, and that's not something I always do. He lost all the love in his life, and now he just exists. He goes from work to home and repeats and numbs himself with alcohol. He doesn't make any meaningful connections with anyone other than Jasper, who he probably sees very much himself in. And when the love of his life is taken away after all these years of not seeing her, and having all those forgotten and repressed feelings come to the surface, I felt that. Julianne Moore is great in the short time she is with us. Her and Owen in the car have such an instant rapport, and you immediately believe that they have a complicated history, with an undeniable attraction at its core. Claire Hope Ashady was wonderful as Key. She's able to convey with ease what I assume is the full spectrum of emotions of someone who is pregnant for the first time. She exudes emotional strength, but at the same time is incredibly physically vulnerable. It's just a great performance. Chiwetel Ejiofor was menacing and believable as Luke. He's one of those nasty, scheming politicians who's actually frightening because they truly do believe that they're doing the right thing and that the ends justify the means. And he doesn't really care if he hurts people along the way, he just wants to be the one in charge. Michael Caine as Jasper is great. Jasper is basically just an older version of Theo. They both lost the love of their lives. Jaspers is in a coma, but basically gone. They both self-medicate, and they were both politically conscious in their earlier years, while more or less just surviving now. However, when push comes to shove, they both stand up for what they believe in and won't be bullied. This movie is interesting in that it has so many writers and that it turned out so well. Normally seeing anything more than a couple writers on a film is a red flag indicating multiple rewrites and too many cooks spoiling the broth. For whatever reason, that wasn't the case here, and all the collaborations and rewrites ultimately worked. No, I can't say how much each contributor actually contributed. It could have been 90% one person with 10% the rest. I don't know. Regardless, I found it an interesting point. So I'm almost done talking about this one, but I saw this one in theaters in 2006. Zero context leading in. Hadn't seen a preview, didn't even know the movie existed until the girlfriend just said, "Let's go, we're gonna go see this." So I said, okay. And to this day, it's the front runner for the most powerful theater experience I've ever had. I remember leaving the theater having this realization that this was what they meant when critics said it's an edge of your seat white knuckle thriller, as I had been sitting on the edge of my seat and gripping the armrest so much that my knuckles were sore. I was floored by how powerful this film was and how immediately it affected me. So in summary, great performances all around, masterful storytelling, amazing visuals, with some innovative filming techniques. It's an emotionally gut-wrenching, powerful film. No question, a 5 out of 5 for me. The only thing about the film that bothers me doesn't even bother me that much. And that's during the climax, when Key and Theo are leaving the building and everyone just pauses and lets them pass. I found that a little bit heavy-handed. But because the scene worked so well, I'm willing to forgive it, even though it didn't pan out 100% logically or realistically. So, that's my long-ass review, kind of walkthrough almost, of Children of Men. Let me know what you think in the comments. And while you're here, may as well may as well subscribe, see more of this. It's quick, it's free, it's relatively painless. Plus, helps me out. Thanks for watching me talk about movies for a little while, and you can tune in next time to see what else Johnny likes.